Are you seriously thinking about selling your house to a robot? Hey guys, it's Hans Struzino with the Gunderman Group at Keller Williams Luxury International, and I was reading through Inman News, which is a real estate publication recently, and an article a couple days ago caught my attention that I wanted to touch on and share with you. It was listed under the technology section, and it's titled, "A Huge Number of Homeowners Willing to Consider an iBuyer Poll." So, what is this? Let's unpack this and see how it might affect our local markets, our local real estate, and then the national conversation as well. And when you got some value out of this, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because I'm gonna continue to put out weekly content just like this, and you're not gonna wanna miss it. So without any further ado, let's do this. The article quotes a poll that was recently released by a brand marketing and design agency, 1000 Watt, that essentially suggests that people, home sellers, would very seriously consider selling their home to an iBuyer program for a variety of reasons. I want to get into this because I think it's really, really, really important to know about as we move forward in this real estate world and economy. So what I found incredibly interesting about this article is, number one, 62.17% of the respondents said that they valued getting the absolute highest price possible for their home when it came to selling. That's consistent with my experience as well. When I go meet with people who want to sell their home, that's pretty much what everyone wants to do. They want to get the most they possibly can so they can go on and do whatever it is they want to do, reap the money back that they put into the home, et cetera, right? But then only a couple of questions in the survey later, over 77% of the respondents who said yes, they want the most money, said they would also either yes, probably, or maybe consider selling to an iBuyer program, which is interesting because generally speaking, it's documented that those programs do not yield the highest possible price. So those two things are very much in conflict. So let's keep going. So when you dig into this, they talk about the theoretical concept of iBuying. It's very simple, it's streamlined, there's no negotiation, you don't have to do open houses, you don't have to stage, you don't have to paint, you don't have to do, you just you sign the contract, you move out, you hand them the keys, they send you a check, right? It's really simple. And that's the pitch. That is what it is that people are getting so excited about. And that is the reason people would either maybe or yes, please consider this, when what they really said they wanted is also the most money possible. So what this is telling us in this market is that there is a barrier to getting to the highest price in the mind of most real estate sellers. Is they think that they have to do all this stressful work, and frankly you do. You have to move, you have to pack, you have to go through the emotions of moving out of a childhood home, or selling a parent's home, or leaving the place you've made all these memories, not to mention packing, moving, boxing, etc. That sucks. It's terrible. Everyone hates that part. And on top of that, then there's this financial burden. You might have to carry the house plus a rental, or plus your new house for a while. All of that becomes incredibly stressful. And so the question then becomes, are people seriously willing to take a bit of a discount for the convenience of having it streamlined and simplified? Even though people said in this study, in this poll rather, that they wanted the most money possible, when you kind of dug into the data, they were actually saying that it wasn't maybe the most important thing. A lot of folks said it's incredibly stressful, it's incredibly disruptive to my life, the whole moving, selling process. It's also really tough for them to have strangers walking through their home, having an open house, especially if they're still living there. These inconveniences start to add up and start to have a monetary value to people. And that is why an iBuyer is coming in and trying to make a spread on that value that they can provide to someone for the simplicity of an easy transaction, right? The other thing that I found so fascinating about this was this concept of certainty. Now, we can all agree that it is really challenging to predict to the dollar what something will sell for on the open market. The market is really hot right now. Some properties are hitting, some people are going bananas for certain things. Sometimes you just get caught up in a vacation cycle and you don't do as well. There's a lot of uncertainty. But when people are trying to make these moves and take financial stock and create a spreadsheet or a budget for their next phase of their life, they want certainty, and an iBuyer also provides that. 50% of people said the certainty of the cash offer had value to them. On top of that, they said that the avoiding the hassle of selling with an agent was a close second in respondents. Almost 42% of people said that that was a factor for them as well. So What we're learning is there's a hassle factor and there's a certainty factor, right? So what we're learning from this is it's not so much iBuyer for the sake of iBuyer, but it's iBuyer because of what it gets them or what they assume it gets them, right? And when you're looking very seriously at this from a consumer standpoint, it's a pretty compelling pitch. You know, you take a little bit less, but it's guaranteed, and you simplify your moving and your selling process. That seems like a really nice pitch that at least most people would consider and listen. But when you're actually looking at numbers, and this is where I think this gets really interesting, you got to figure out where the breaking point is, right? How much is someone willing to pay for that convenience, right? There's a reason that there's do-it-yourselfers versus contractors. There's a reason that people try and sell their houses themselves, right? They're not at a threshold where they believe that they can get more value from paying someone than they could just doing it themselves, right? And that's sort of what we're talking about here. So what does this mean for the future? Well, to me, it's a big opportunity. And I think for anyone who's either looking at listing their house, considering an iBuyer, or interviewing agents, this is a lens through which you should look. Additionally, any agents watching this should also consider this very seriously. You have to know your market, and you have to know what you're competing against and what you're trying to accomplish when that person hires you. Clearly, this data is suggesting that the certainty of the sale, the certainty of the number, and the stress relief, the ease of the transaction, and all of that is really paramount to today's modern home seller. So let's look at this really quickly. A lot of the times when iBuyers are making offers, there is some level of a stated discount, and then there are fees, that are sometimes less, sometimes the same as commissions, right? When you're looking at percentages of sales, the numbers vary based on price point, obviously. So when you're talking about someone taking, the low end of the comps plus a 5% fee or commission, you're really talking about it, $100,000. You might be talking about $5,000, $7,000 swings, right? And that might be net worth it to somebody to spend $7,000 because they're already spending that on a moving truck and all of that to not go through all the crazy hassle, right? But when we're talking about like $1 million price point, that becomes $70,000 for that same percentage, right? And so what will be really interesting is to see at what price points, in what markets, and in what circumstances these iBuyer programs become viable. Are they scalable across all major metros and all price points? To be determined. My opinion, probably not. I know that I probably wouldn't do that as a consumer. There's a point at which I would take the risk and try and get more on the market than I would just take a guaranteed, 90% of what I could have netted sort of thing. If the money is big enough, if we're talking about $70,000 versus $7,000 as an example. So it's something to consider, something to think about. And regardless of if you're thinking about selling or you're an agent who is trying to attract business, here's something to seriously consider. Is this a viable part of our market? It is certainly in the conversation, but it will be really interesting to track and see what happens with these various price points in these various markets and where that threshold lies. What people are actually willing to value that guarantee and that certainty at. Because at some point, it's not going to make sense to folks anymore, and that will probably be our threshold. So speaking to the real estate agents watching this, here's something to seriously consider. When you're going and walking in to a listing appointment and you're trying to talk to that seller about what they're gonna do and obviously pitching yourself to potentially represent them on that, think about how you can use this data to help you. Help them, most importantly. They care clearly about certainty. They care about the ease of the process. If you can offer both of those things, that's clearly why the iBuyer pitch is attractive. Now, if you're a seller, think seriously about what that's worth to you. How much money are you willing to lop off the top to have that certainty and to have that easy transaction, that flexibility, and that just like streamlined approach? Like, where does the threshold lie? And think very seriously about how to partner with, whether it's an iBuyer or an agent, to get that done effectively. My personal opinion is that as the price points climb up, it will probably make less and less sense to go with an iBuyer program because the zeros are so big and the swings are so gigantic that most people will want to have the home exposed to the greatest number of potential buyers and so forth. But on a lower end price point, this could make an absolute ton of sense for somebody who wants to sell an $80,000, $100,000, $130,000 house, or $200,000 or whatever the number is, right? Because the zeros aren't there in the same way as some of the higher price points. So hopefully you got something out of that. I've linked to the article down in the comments section. Hit me up and let me know what you think about this. Let's chat it out. I'd love to hear if you're thinking about an iBuyer, what that's really worth to you. If you're competing against iBuyers as an agent, what that experience has been like. Because you guys, this is part of our ecosystem in our world. It is a viable option for some, probably not for all, and we need to figure out how best to approach this as a real estate community, and ultimately to try and serve our sellers and our clients and the people who are trying to transact, right? Because that's what it's all about in the end. So without any further ado, this is Hans Struzina with the Gunderman Group signing off for now. See you on the next one.